Hi guys, it's Ben Purcell here and welcome to Mindset Mastery. This is a 12-part program that I've purposely created to help facilitate behavioral change and ultimately help you discover a few things about yourself that you didn't otherwise know, but really give you the tools to help you change your behavior and achieve your goals. So initially, when we talk about mindset, there's always a bit of a natural defense that people have to that because we're talking about the mind. Now, just like we train the body, we can train the mind, but the key before learning how to train the mind is we have to understand how the mind works, how we think and how we behave in certain situations. So this program is largely about that. It's about giving you the tools to basically understand, but then to take some action. So we'll get into that in the later modules. But here we are in module 1, and the very inception or the starting point of changing your mindset and better understanding your mindset is what we call self-awareness. So the main premise of this first video and the journey that I want to take you onto is what is self-awareness and how can we start to cultivate that in our life. So basically, we all as human beings, we have a story. Now our story is the way that we see the world. There's a quote talking about that we all have different versions of reality, and that our version of reality is only 0.003% of what is actually real. Does that make sense? So through our two eyes and through the conditioning and the patterning that we've experienced in our lifetime, we form certain beliefs, certain values, and ultimately certain types of conditioning. Now, this story, it comes during our developmental phase of life, generally from 6 to 12 years of age. Now, the primary people in our life during this time are the authority figures in our parents. Now, our parents, no doubt, shape much of the beliefs, the value systems, and ultimately our conditioning. Now, some of it's great, some of it is passed down generationally, and what you start to discover is as you become older and mature, there are certain things in your past or in your story that is there, certain beliefs that you start to question, you start to challenge them. Is that my beliefs, or are they just things that I've just taken down from my parents or from friends or from teachers, etc.? Right? So this story forms and develops as we grow and we interact with the world and the environment. And that forms what we see as our identity. Now, the key part in understanding our identity is understanding two things. Now, we can either have the identity of ownership, accountability, and responsibility, so that little OAR acronym. Now, that is definitely the way that we want to try and interact with the world and understand and perceive the things that are happening to us. But many people take on the position of blame, excuses, and denial, and we can associate that with more of a victim mindset. Now, I just want to frame this out here because this will make sense as we go throughout this journey in module 1. So identity is formed and shaped. Now, often when we're growing up and we do something that is seen to be bad and we get punishment for that, we can start to blame and use excuses and deny, depending on the types of people we've been around or the kind of behaviors that have been accepted in coping with adversity. So that's how identity is actually shaped and formed. Now, this flows on into adulthood, right? So what it does form is it forms some self-limiting beliefs as a protective mechanism to really stop us from getting hurt. So think about when you're a child and there was some kind of experience where maybe you tried and it just didn't work out for you, and you got chastised in that, you got hurt in that situation. Well, as an infant in that moment, you weren't able to cope and deal with that kind of stress and that kind of trauma. So we formed certain beliefs, right? And these normally out of protection. They're there to try and protect us, but what they end up doing is actually they end up holding us back from a lot of the things that we can achieve in our life, just merely just there to protect us. And then from these beliefs, we have this little voice or an inner voice, and I know that you have one, I have one, most of the people I've worked with in my career has got one, and it's the subconscious mind playing on repeat, on autopilot. And it's those nasty little things that your little voice says to you, the things: you can't do this, you're not worthy, you're not good looking, you're not enough, you can't complete this task, etc., etc., etc. Normally, the people that I work with, the little voice that they have is not one that's telling them, you can do this, I believe in you, you're 100% capable of doing this. It's normally one that's actually tearing them down rather than building them up, which is quite fascinating, isn't it? We think that, us being as humans, we would want to try and support and learn how we can, really thrive and be the best version of ourselves. But we have this massive battle inside of our mind against ourselves. So the next step with understanding our little voice is, what will be our choice? Will we choose to accept what the little voice is saying to us and live our life in that regard? Or will we choose to reject some of the things that the little voice is saying to you subconsciously that have formed out of protection? So when we choose to reject some of these self-limiting things that the inner voice is saying to us on a day-to-day basis, we start to consciously retake control of our thoughts. What that leads us to naturally is confronting the best and the worst parts of ourselves. And this is where we authentically kind of fall in love with yourself all over again. Or maybe you've never actually gone through the process where you actually start to really like yourself. And it's such a healthy and amazing process to go through, where you start to understand, what are my strengths and what do I love most about myself? But where are the areas where I'm weak and what's holding me back in my life? And if I could just get rid of a few of those things, how would that impact, my life, my career, and my relationships for, the next 5, 10, 15, 25, 50 years even, right? So this is a really key question to consider. And often I find that so many people never get to this point, that there's dormant kind of self-limiting behaviors that have occurred due to story and conditioning and identity forming, and then these self-limiting beliefs and a harmful psychology that is going on and on and on. They never get to the point where they can actually really peel back the layers and understand where they're falling short. So this is key to really start to deep dive into. And the key part then is to go through some forgiveness, because so many of us, we carry the burden of the decisions and the choices we've made in the past into our present and then continually into our future. And you don't need to carry those things with you anymore. We just have to learn the lesson from them, choose to accept them for what they are, and then release them. And that's what the forgiveness process is all about. Now, when we do this really gives an opportunity to heal and to start to re-establish and understand a healthy relationship with the painful experiences that we've gone through our life. So ultimately, so much of what our behavior is about protecting us from pain and experiencing pain. And the key question here as well to ask yourself is pain happening for us, or is it happening to us? Because as we go through our life, we go through so many different types of mini traumatic and major traumatic events. Now, as we're growing and learning, especially during our developmental phases, some of the very early instances where we've gone through intensive trauma could have been in the playground at school, could have been at home, could have been, just not achieving something, and it didn't work out the way we want. So we instantly associate failure or heartbreak as painful situations, and don't get me wrong, they are. But what we can do is we can learn from them and we can grow through those certain circumstances, take the lessons, and ultimately start to move into a position where we believe that pain can actually become profitable in our life. Yes, pain can become profitable if you let it. And so many people, as they advance themselves, they get to this position. Now, it's amazing when you get to this place because there's a level of freedom in your life, and it takes away all of the fear of pain. And we can start to actually go after more things, in terms of your career, in your health, in your travel goals, maybe the big, scary dreams in your life that you think that you're not capable of doing. Fear and the fear of failure and pain is holding you back from going after those. But imagine if you could get yourself to a place where you realize that for every failure, we're just failing forward. It's just a lesson. We're getting better and better and better and closer to actually ultimately what you want and the things that you want to achieve in your life. Wouldn't that be cool? So this is why we start to really audit our relationship with pain, and we look at it, am I leaning into adverse circumstances, or am I completely avoiding those? There's different personality traits there. Some people are okay with failure, other people are definitely not. So let's reframe this so we can really nail this, and I want you to take a couple of key takeaways from this first video. The whole premise of this video is, what is self-awareness? Well, it's becoming aware of our story, which is shaped during our developmental phases, and that forms our beliefs, our values, and ultimately creates the patterning or conditioning, the way that we live the rest of our life in many circumstances. That becomes our identity. Now, due to certain instances in our life as we're growing up, we can take on two mindsets. We can take on one of ownership, accountability, and responsibility, or we can take on another of blame, excuses, and denial, the victim mindset. What we want to do is really take on this empowered state where we take 100% responsibility, ownership, and accountability for our life. Because if we live in that place, then nothing that anyone says, nothing that happens to us can change that. We have the ability to 100% impact and change our life, which is awesome. So then what we need to do is we need to learn what our self-limiting beliefs are. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how to do that. And we need to start to unravel those and peel those back and learn how we can let them go from our life. Because ultimately, we don't want things holding us back from living the best life we possibly can. We then need to learn to retrain the little voice, and simply becoming aware, self-awareness, is the ability to spot the inner voice in action and then consciously stop and think something different. When you say, I can't, when you say, I'm not good enough, when you say, I'm not pretty enough, when you say, I'm not lovable, when you say, this will not look good on me, it's consciously stopping in that moment and choosing to retrain and believe, no, I can do this. I do believe in myself. I am worthy. I am lovable. I am beautiful. Because ultimately, our self-worth is not from our works. It's not from material possessions. It's not from, who we hang around with. It's not from the clothes that we wear. Our self-worth, which is the value, your unique value as a human being. Think about it. Worth, value. Your self-worth, your human value, is totally and utterly dependent on your internal character. It's about who you are as a person, the way you care for others, the unique, special characteristics about you. That is what's worthy about you. And those things need to shine bright. So when we start to retake control of the little voice, the real, true, authentic self can emerge. And that's such a beautiful and powerful process. So this is why we choose to reject the harmful things that the little voice is saying out of protection. We learn to confront the best and the worst parts of ourselves. When we do this, we re-empower ourselves and ultimately change our relationship with pain into one that is becoming profitable for us in all situations. And ultimately, that is going to just have such a profound impact in your life. So those are the key takeaways for video 1. And in video 2, we're going deep into the self-limiting beliefs, but then also the types of behavior that occurs. And what we're talking about specifically is self-sabotage. So can't wait to see you in the next video. And I'm just really glad that we're here going through this process together. It's 12 parts. Stick with me. It's a marathon. This is not a sprint. And psychology and mindset is ever evolving. So I'm really glad that I can give you a few tools and tips that you can deep dive into your own personal self and help you just achieve wild success in your life. So stay with us. It's going to be an amazing journey. and I'll see you in Module 2.